Welcome to Docs Talk, episode 38. Today we have Dr. Wayne Gradman. Dr. Gradman is a retired vascular surgeon who has a new book called The Fall Guy, How to Keep Gravity from Ruining Your Day, published October 15th, 2024. Dr. Gradman shares lots of tips about how to prevent falls, factors associated with falls. There has not been a book written specifically about falls in the last few decades. We just really enjoyed this interview with Dr. Gradman. So glad he came on the show. As always, if you like the show, hit the like button, subscribe, share. We're trying to reach as many people as possible. Without further ado, here's our interview with Dr. Wayne Gradman. Dr. Gradman, good morning and welcome to the show. Thanks for being on. And wanted to ask you, how did you become interested in fall prevention?
Well, that's easy because the truth is that in my middle ages, I started to fall frequently. And I call myself an Uberklutz, which is nothing more than an oaf, over the top oaf. So I fell quite a bit. And I came up with the idea of the 20-foot rule. But really, I love to teach. I love to teach postgraduate medical students. And I carried that over into my practice, where I spent the time to help my patients learn why their lifestyles was leading to vascular disease, which was my specialty. So I was fortunate enough to win the Teacher of the Year award in 1998. And I think that my doing this book will probably help more people than I ever treated in my 40 plus years of practice, because I was doing piecework. I can reach a much wider audience with this. And so that's what led to my doing the book.
Beautiful. And what you decided to go from vascular to this, beside your personal experience, you saw a lot of patients with this fall or a lot of, in your books, goes to a lot of your friends as well.
Well, anybody I talk to knows someone that fell. And even the people that I talk to say, I wish I had this book earlier because I fell. It really had nothing to do with my practice at all. It had to do with my personal experience with falling and saying, this is ridiculous. You shouldn't be falling. These are easy, preventable, and practical hints for how to avoid falling.
What are the common mistakes that you see? What are the common mistakes that those go to the 20-foot rules and some of the common things that you think can be easy preventable?
Well, the 20-foot rule is really nothing more than look where you're going. I tended to fall when I got to a curb, and everybody does that every day. And the curbs are dangerous. People trip and fall on curb. I always have a thing about individuals walking and watching their cell phone at the same time. And when you turn 40, you start to get presbyopia, or difficulty seeing close objects, and you need glasses. So you're looking at your cell phone with your glasses, and then you have to see where you're going, where you don't need glasses. And it's a common back and forth, and people fall a lot when that happens. That happened to me twice. There's also the idea of, it's presbyopia. It's very, very important to fall-proof your house. That to me is primary. I have a brother-in-law who's a plumber, and he spent a lot of time fall-proofing houses, and you need to have 3 grab bars in every shower and 1 on the outside of the shower. You need to have non-slip pads in your shower and outside of your shower. I went to Europe with my wife recently, and we stayed in all kinds of hotels, good hotels, medium hotels, bad hotels, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. They don't have grab bars, or if they do, they're very small and hard to get to. And we were actually afraid of many times in Europe. So and in the home, there's also the important factors when it comes to stairs. I talk a lot about stairs in my book because people fall on stairs, usually downhill, which is the more dangerous of the two. And the importance of, as you get older, of using a banister and making sure you have banisters on both the inside and outside of circular stairways or straight stairways, whatever. You need to have staircases. And then I talk about outdoor lighting, which many people do not have. And you need to have strips of, just like they do in public buildings by law, you need to have hints in your home that you're about to approach a set of stairs. And these are so common factors in falling.
Yeah, that's great. You know, when you go to Europe and some of the older countries, the not only the hotels, the staircases, as well as the streets. Sometimes you go, there's such an uneven, you know, sidewalk. Suddenly you go from changes. Yeah, I think the best place I've seen is in Japan. That, you know, a lot of time they're even for the blind people, they have, you know, prevent things crossing the streets. So, but in Europe and some of the older countries, it's very, very difficult, even for a young person that, you know. But today's the problem, I think, I see that work is the cell phone. Even our employees, sometimes you sit down the hallways, crash into the, you know, to the side wall or to an equipment, because there's just so much involved in their, you know, listening to a post or something like that, and not pay attention to just where they're going. So as we get older, as you said, it's get worse. One thing that I come across is the medication. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting factor in falls. There is a NIH publication that gives points to certain kinds of medications, like the very commonly used benzodiazepine group of medications. I, for instance, take a sleeping pill. I've been doing. I used to have to wake up in the middle of the night all the time to answer calls, and I didn't know that going into vascular surgery that I'd be called so often during the night. And I've come to rely on a sleeping pill, which is Restoril, and that's a short-acting benzodiazepine. And these are the addictive type. So basically, I'm very much addicted to that medication. And if you wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, you have an increased risk of falling. It turns out that 1/4 of the falls in the house are due to are in the bedroom. 1/4 are in the bathroom, and 1/4 are on stairs. So this is a major factor. The longer acting ones, like Xanax and Valium, are less addictive, but they have their risks because they're depressants of sorts. And then there's the antihypertensives. People change their medication all the time. You know that you're always adjusting antihypertensive medication up and down. And then when you adjust it up, patients don't bother looking at their blood pressure. They don't take their blood pressure as much as they should. They should actually self-adjust their medication in many cases. And often their blood pressure drops very low, and that's a great risk for falling, or arrhythmia, and that also is a risk.
I know in your book you mentioned some surprising factors that folks may not be aware of that relate to falls. Can you mention a couple more just for the audience?
Yeah, some people don't realize how important vision is to falls, and I firsthand I have that experience. I was about 50 years old. I think it was about 50, 60. I went to my wife's ophthalmologist, and she said, "Oh, you got early cataracts." Well, I thought I could see perfectly well. And then she said, "Come back in 5 years." And I did that out of to humor her. And then she said, "Your cataracts are bad enough to need surgery." And I thought my vision was okay. But then I got my first cataract fixed, and I was astounded at the increase in clarity and brightness of my vision. And I could see the old vision and the new vision back and forth because I still had the other cataract there. It turns out that the risk of falls decreases tremendously when you fix a first cataract, but not when you fix the second one. So that was an interesting discovery to me. So if your doctor says fix your cataracts, you'll be amazed at the improved vision you experience, and that will decrease your incidence of fall. I also talk in the book about something called black ice. That's not very common. I was born in Chicago, and of course, I fell on the ice all the time. Uh, but when I came out to California, I didn't encounter ice. But I went to Eastern Europe a year or so ago, and I realized that I didn't say a word about ice in my book. And there, there's something called black ice, which is nothing more than ice sitting on asphalt. Asphalt is everywhere in a city. And you think you're going to be stepping on something that's solid because you see the black asphalt. And it's very slippery. It's amazing. Just watch people if they get close to asphalt and they fall. They take big strides. So that's one thing. And uh, there are other factors.
Friction of the shoes on the ice and on the different places as well.
Oh, there are many ways to prevent falls on ice. First of all, when you get to stairs, that's terribly, terribly dangerous. And so if there's a banister there, you absolutely must use it. And if possible, try to walk in compacted snow to avoid walking on icy stairs. There's also taking small steps. I call them penguin steps or baby steps. Small steps have a benefit that can be explained with physics, but it's very important. That first step is the one that's the big problem because you don't realize that you're on an icy surface. So just start to take small steps. And then you have shoes that are now being made with gritty soles. One of those is called Vibram Arctic grips. That you can actually walk up ice at a low grade, but you can actually walk up ice with these kinds of shoes. And then there are devices that you can put on your shoes, like exospikes and yak tracks that fit on your shoe like a little bit like a glove, but it's more open, like a chain link fence with little spikes. Those are, and the most important thing to do, I think, is to not be afraid of using walking poles. Poles have spiky ends, and if you use two poles, you'll have a three-way balance point that will prevent you from falling on ice. So those are critical things.
Yeah, we live in Colorado, and we have lots of variability on weather, from black ice to snow to sort of slush. So we see all of those things, and it happened to myself as well. So yeah, no, those are great pointers. And as yeah, you're in California, but in this area you see all the variety of weather, all 4 seasons. So it's a very common. So for the first snow, people fall, people get angina, and then comes the rain and sun and snow and slippery roads. So those are all good pointers.
Another kind of footwear that I like very much for older people that bend down all the time and fall in the bedroom. I use Skechers a great deal in the home because it has a built-in shoehorn. So what you do is you just flip into the Skechers. You don't have to bend down to put on your shoes, and that can prevent falls. They're very, very helpful.
Can you go with some of the strengthening the exercises that can prevent from falling, and go some of the, just how to prevent, as it says your appendix is excellent, but can you go over summarize some of those exercises that you can prevent from falling?
Yes, the most important thing about falls is you have to adhere to them. You can't just do it once or twice and expect to get benefit. You have to do it several times a week. And so I try to pare it down to the absolute minimum. So I divide them into standing and lying down on the floor. And the goal of all of this is to increase the flexity, strength, and balance of the lower extremities. I hold on to something and just go down and rise up. And of course, you know that you're using your femoris muscles. And if you get the burn, you increase the strength of that muscle. Then stretching is very important. I put my feet behind me one at a time and stretch the back of your calf muscles. Then I stretch the femoris muscle by lifting my heel behind. And these are all common exercises. And then lunges are very, very helpful for both balance and strength. And then lying down, I try to exercise my hip, which is a joint that rusts up very quickly. And so I do external rotation, leg raises, and leg flexing. Those are the major forms of exercises. You can condense that into a very quick 10-minute exercise routine. It's one that you can do 3 or 4 times a week, and you will see you get tremendous benefit from that. That's not to rule out cardio. I saw your episode on high intensity training. I was blown away, but that's not my goal. My goal is for people to avoid falling, and the emphasis has to be on the lower extremities. And I've tried to pare it down to an absolute minimum.
And also, you mentioned about Tai Chi in your book too. Sorry, Rob.
That's okay.
About the Tai Chi. When I was in China, they put music in the morning, and you see all elderly comes out of the assisted living, and they do sort of Tai Chi, and that has, I talked to some of the doctors, it says can prevent completely, and that a lot of the decrease the fall, as well as cardiovascular, as well as just being together exercising, that can help longevity.
I love Tai Chi. The trouble is people don't have the time for it. I try to put this into an everyday person's routine. And if I were retired in China, I'd be out doing Tai Chi every day. But it's hard to do when you're either working, or even when you're retired. You have to get a group together often. It's something that's good. It's been proved to be good to prevent falling, but it's not practical for most people.
Yeah, they call it Tai Chi stretching and Tai Chi warm-ups, and I think I try to do them a couple of times a day. They're the same. There's similar stretching.
Wonderful.
Yeah, 5 to 10 minutes. Now you do the whole steps and all of that, and I think those simple things just get the joint moving, yin and yang, and at least make the day start well. So I'm sure. I think any exercise, any strengthening, anything that keeps the muscle tones, that I think will help us.
Absolutely. There are 100 recipes for exercise, and mine is just one. It's just simply focused on the lower extremity. I agree with you 100% on Tai Chi. I think that's a wonderful introduction to the regimen.
Could you walk us through the 20-foot rule? I know you mentioned it a few minutes ago, but could you maybe give us an implementation? And just wanted to kind of hear like what that is and how you do it. Like, you do it all the time, or just when you're walking a specific way or location?
Well, I use it all the time now. Anytime I'm out in the city or the country, I take a quick glance, roughly 20 feet ahead of me. And in the city, the most common thing are slabs of sidewalk that are unequal in height, and it's so easy to trip on those, just like a fall anywhere. And I realized that when I get to curbs, it's not just stepping off the curb and stepping up the curb, but if you look at it, in most cities, the asphalt and the cement come together. They'll pave the asphalt, and it'll overlap the cement. And when you walk off a curb, you think you've achieved the objective of walking off a curb, but then you get to this little difference in height, and it's enough to trip on. I've done that. I've done it twice. I didn't fall, but I said, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that this is a fall hazard." And so now I carefully watch when I get off the curb. It's just full of all kinds of jeopardy risks.
And the other question we had was folks who have fallen, if they've had a fall or an injury or a close call, that can affect how one thinks about going out and doing things with family and friends. Could you comment about that a little bit, and how to help to what to do about it if someone's anxious about falling?
Right. The fear of falling can occur without having fallen before, but it's especially common in people who have fallen. And so recommend walking aids. There's nothing you could you're not going to undergo psychotherapy because you have a fear of fall. But what you can do is either wear a cane, but better is to use a walker, because that gives you full support. And I've known individuals who had a fear of falling, and they started using a walker, and now they no longer have the fear of falling. It's the transition from cane to walker is a big one, but it occurs quickly in many people who start using a cane and want something even more sturdy.
Yeah, especially after surgery, or when you live in, my mother is an assistant living, and you go over there and you see, unfortunately, people that have polypharmacy, and if they do not use appropriate things, the fall is very frequent.
Yes. Well, most extended care facilities, of course, have flat floor. They're very acutely aware of the fall risk, and they'll give you a walker at the drop of a hat, and that's true in hospitals as well.
Do you have any other pearls that wisdom as we get older, how to prevent fall and live long life?
Well, my favorite subject, you haven't mentioned it yet, is Churchill.
Oh, yes.
I have a thing about Churchill. I thought I fell a lot. And then this last year, I went to Normandy for the 80th reunion of D-Day. And I spent some time in England going to his castle and to his place of residence late in life with Chartwell in southern England. And I said, I have to read about this guy. And my guide mentioned, oh, I have a 1-volume book for you. And I bought the 1-volume book, not realizing that it was a doorstopper. It was 1,000 pages long. And as I was reading that book, I discovered that Churchill fell far more than anybody else in history. I call him the patron saint of fall. When he's a little kid, he fell off his tricycle. He fell off his bicycle. He was playing tag with a friend, jumped off a roof thinking that the trees would stop his fall to the ground. He suffered a concussion, a ruptured kidney, and a spinal fracture. He had so many injuries. He dislocated his shoulder, so he couldn't play polo. What a loss that was for him. And but right in the middle of all that, his mother, who was Lady Jeanette Churchill, and she was an American. Churchill himself was both American and English. He had passports to both countries. And his mother was beautiful. She had the money. Father had the English title. And so that was what they did at the turn of the 19th century or the 20th century. And she was getting older, but she was very fond of Italian high spiked heel shoes. And so she wound up falling down some stairs. And what happened after that is probably the first obvious malpractice case I've ever seen. But the doctor first didn't elevate her legs. She got gangrene of one of her toes. You get that from certain types of fractures. And Winston stepped in and said, well, do it once and do it right. Well, he wound up doing a thigh amputation, which is a rather remarkable amputation for just gangrene of the toe. And about a week later, the stitch came off the artery, and his mother died. So she died because of a fall. But the way she got there was just awful. And then Winston Churchill was crossing the street, and this was after that, crossing the street in the United States, and looked left when he should have been looking right. After he got halfway across the street, got slammed by a car. And then before he died, he got a hip fracture. So I call him the patron saint. So he just fell right and left, and just an interesting history that no one knows about.
And I read about Humpty Dumpty. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. Well, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and I talk about that because I wanted to put some humor in the book. And he fell, and of course couldn't be put back together again. And then I talk about entropy of all things. I wander off. I love to wander off.
There was a cannon that falls and it becomes an egg. Is that what I got?
Well, during the English Civil War, which was like about 1649, 1670 something, where Cromwell was in that, and uh, the the royalists, the king had a big cannon that was sitting on a wall. They nicknamed it Humpty Dumpty, and then it fell and smashed. And then 2 centuries later, Lewis Carroll, the writer of Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, decided to change the cannon into an egg, and the egg fell off.
I thought that was fascinating because I never knew the story. So that's great. That's fantastic.
I'm not sure if you cover it in the book or not, but about osteopenia and osteoporosis and falling. Could you comment if the
Yes.
risk, fracture risk, and other factors there?
Yeah, that's a case where adding medicine helps, in contrast to trying to reduce the number of benzodiazepines and antihypertensives that you take. I had a dear friend that I like to believe that I told his doctor that you should be doing tests for osteoporosis because of when you fall, look how many old women fall and fracture their hip. And osteoporosis is so easily treated that frequent testing is necessary when you get older. Anyway, my friend fortunately was treated for osteoporosis the year before, aggressively before he fell, but he fell forward on stairs, fractured his skull, got a concussion, was in coma for a week, and his doctor said, "You would be dead if I hadn't given you this medication," and he saved his life. So osteoporosis is a very important risk factor for morbidity in falls, and in this case, it avoided death, really. I also talk about the importance of fixing your back. I had this interesting, I see people all the time walking around hunched, imbalanced, and I had a long history of back problems. I had ruptured discs, and one required surgery. So my backs and even the hips started to hurt. And eventually, trying exercises and epidurals, they just didn't work. Honestly, I don't know why everybody has to go through that, but it's strongly recommended. There are people that actually specialize in that. But I wound up in the neurosurgeon's office, and through a very simple operation, these days this is done through endoscopes. And I just woke up and I had zero pain. I referred to one of my doctor friends from medical school, the same doctor, same thing happened. He got better and has absolutely no pain. And here's the interesting thing. My hip pain disappeared. I don't understand why. I thought I had hip arthritis. I probably do still have hip arthritis because the MRI showed it, but the hip pain went away when I fixed my back. I no longer hunch, and I resumed the same exercise regimen I did when I was 20 years younger.
Interesting.
What about the diet? I know the diet, we always stress on that, and I think it's a crucial thing as we get older. I go to some of the nursing home or some of the elderly patients that because of an accessibility to good food, and I think that's a part of their osteopenia and osteoporosis and to prolong. So what are your thoughts on the diet?
Well, I do have a chapter on diet, and I myself have had weight issues in the past, and I did a lot of research on diet for this book, and I discovered that the diet that works best for me is just to eliminate all the refined carbohydrates, every one of them: bread, potatoes, rice, pasta. It's not a low carb diet by any means. I have fruit in the morning, but those refined carbohydrates are death on wheels. You lose weight, you keep it off. And I'm convinced of that. Also, exercise has been shown not to be a major factor in losing weight. This is very interesting research done with some very advanced physiological techniques. It turns out that when you exercise more, you use fewer of your basal, the calories you expend using for your basal metabolic rate. it turns out, which I didn't know, that more than half the calories that your body expends every day is on your basal metabolic rate, not what you do or not how much exercise you have. So that if your body cuts back on those calories, when you exercise, that fills that void. That's where you expend those calories. And so the most important factor is diet. And the corollary to that is you lose your weight, you have to keep up the diet to keep the weight off. I use a modified paleo diet. My son uses the keto diet, and both of them exclude refined carbohydrates. And that's my take on it. Now, there are 100 different theories, and you probably have your own, but those work for me. I kept my weight off. I lost like 35, 40 pounds, and I haven't gained an ounce since.
Yeah, that's a common theme on our show is sugar, the perils of sugar as it's really the ultimate refined carb, and is such a detriment. We've had probably 20 plus episodes where we talk about the perils of sugar. So thank you for including that in your book.
Yeah, I think the sodas, and I think especially diet soda, that is lots of the the minerals in the gut, as well as kills all the good bacteria, and it's just so common these days. Energy drinks and sodas and all of that. I think I think is one of the biggest one as well.
No, you talked about osteoporosis, and even as an adult, you should be taking a little bit of calcium. I do it with yogurt. Other people do it with pills, but kids don't. When they fall, they don't break bones because their bones are so strong. Right. They drink 3 cups of milk a day, and they're they're closer to the ground. That helps a lot. But we have to keep up our some form of calcium as we get older. I think that's true as well.
Well, certainly, Dr. Gradman, where can our listeners find you, and do you have any other comments?
Well, only one more comment. If you have time for it.
Of course.
Just don't read any articles that tell you there's a good way to fall. When you fall, you crash to the ground. There's very little you can do to get into a position or strategize how you're going to fall to the ground. There are articles like that get published in major newspapers and magazines, and they say, well, if you fall, then this is the way to fall. You really can't do that. But when I fall, I just crash to the ground. As for my book, it's been 1 year publishing, 1 year writing the book, and 1 year publishing. And the publishing part is the hardest part. I decided to go with Amazon Books, and you can find the Kindle version of my book now on Amazon Books. My official publication date is mid-October.
Can you tell us the titles again? And your company?
Okay, it's called The Fall Guy, which is the same as the movie with Ryan Gosling, The Fall Guy. And my subtitle is How to Keep Gravity from Ruining Your Day.
Well, thank you very much. We really enjoyed it. We learned a lot. And stay healthy.
Well, Abbas and Robert, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's really a pleasure. And you guys are great.